The Arcturus Karambit. I'm going to preface this entire review by saying this is one of the best airsoft guns I have ever reviewed, out of the box, ever. The performance alone is amazing. The range is ridiculous. I was able to reach out with DMR-like distances and consistently hit people very accurately. I ran 0.32 gram BBs, and this thing really, really likes them, even though it's probably roughly the limit of what it can hop. But this is an amazing airsoft gun.
Yep. Hit!
Yeah, we're gonna get hit pretty hard.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Arcturus Karambit Mod1 FE. It's kind of a mouthful. I'm just going to call it the Karambit from now on. It's essentially an updated model of their previous version. It has their optical MOSFET and a couple, I believe, minor external changes, including pistol grip, and if I'm not terribly mistaken, the dust cover. There's a couple of things. It's a really small, lightweight package, and it packs a punch more so than you would expect from such a small airsoft gun. Before I dive into this, let's check out everything it comes with. The gun will come with a cleaning rod, a couple of tools for disassembly and maintenance, an Arcturus patch, which is always fun, a magnet, which is pretty neat, throw that on your refrigerator, a Dean's to Tamiya adapter in case you're still stuck in the past and you're not using Dean's batteries, a little sheet showing that your airsoft gun was actually checked and chronoed at the factory, a rather good instruction manual, definitely check this out, a small card showing how to program and use your MOSFET, and lastly, a variable capacity magazine. If you want to take the bottom off, there's a switch you can flip inside of it that'll switch it between 130 and 30 rounds. So you can have a mid-cap or a low-cap magazine. In my experience, these are great quality. They feed really well. They've got a little bit of a follower here to feed the last couple of rounds, and a window on the side so you can see when you're about that 20 or 30 round mark. We'll start with the back of the airsoft gun as always and move our way forward. It does have a really interesting kind of skeletal-like stock. It's plastic, but it's got some texturing, some actually interesting patterning on the back. It's just enough to set on your shoulder. It's not much of a stock, but it works as intended. It's not super wobbly, but it's got a little bit of wobble to it. Not a lot, and it really doesn't bother me at all. The lever to adjust the stock also has a really hefty spring under it. Just in front of that is a quick detach sling loop. This quick detach piece does not come with a gun, but I put it here just as an example. Kind of a side note, it's unfortunate. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 Magpul slings, and they're all quick detach for my firearms. I like to throw them on my airsoft guns and use those, so I don't have to go buy airsoft specific slings. I just buy good quality Magpul slings. And for whatever reason, those quick detaches don't fit. There's just not quite enough clearance there and they snap right out. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I did find one in my random parts bin that does not just rip right out, and it fits pretty well. The battery compartment is this guy. It's a aluminum tube. It unscrews from the back, and I'm unscrewing the whole thing here. There's a couple of components to it. You've got the tube and the back cap. I like to take the whole tube off and kind of put the battery and the wiring in this and then feed it up into the gun. But fitting everything in here, including a battery, this is the Arcturus 1000 milliamp hour 11120C battery. They threw this in with the airsoft gun for me to check out and review. And I'll tell you, the whole thing barely fits in here, and it's really, unfortunately, tough to do on camera, but you really kind of have to crimp it, cramp it, squeeze it all up in there. It fits, it works, but unfortunately, this is a pretty small battery, and it's about more or less the most you're gonna fit in this battery compartment. I hope Arcturus offers an extension for this, or maybe even an aftermarket company. I'm sure there are options out there, just to get a little bit more battery room in here. Having even an inch or a half inch more to fit even just wiring would be really, really nice. And what I noticed too is there's actually a screw-in piece that screws into the spring guide here, and it's rather long. It's probably half to 3/4 of an inch past the end of the gearbox. If that were flat, that would actually buy you a fair amount more room in the battery compartment here. The receiver on the gun is polymer, but it is probably one of the highest quality receivers polymer-wise you can get on the market. It's really rigid, it is extremely solid, it doesn't creak or wobble at all. I do really like it, especially for the weight savings. Additionally, the trigger guard is built in, so If you're wondering, no, you can't replace it, but there's still plenty of room here and it's still very comfortable. All the controls in the Karambit are ambidextrous, so your magazine release on the right is also on the left, as is your bolt release catch, whatever you want to call it, on the left and the right. Speaking of that, if you pull your charging handle back, there's a fake bolt catch here. So your bolt will catch, you can adjust your rotary style hop up under here, and if you want, you can press either of the releases and your little fake bolt will drop forward. Does have an ambi selector that's pretty normal. I like it. It's a nice, crisp, clean detent to it, and it works well from either side. So if you're a lefty, you can still use the right side selector. The Karambit comes with a set of pretty simple flip-up sights. They're polymer, but they work really well. The rear one is adjustable for windage and has 2 peep apertures, a really small one that I'm not the biggest fan of. It's a little tough to see through, but if you flip that down, there's a really big aperture. It's almost too big. There's no sweet spot with the rear sight, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But they're great quality, they stay in place rather well. The front one was a little loose. I've got it crunched down pretty good with a screw, and it still kind of wobbles, but if you want, you can throw a piece of electrical tape under that. It does adjust for elevation only, and these, there's no spring to them or anything like that, but they have a really good detent, so they'll stay up or down pretty easily. The rail system on the front is M-LOK. It's a really short M-LOK, so you can probably maybe fit a grip and a light on here. There's not a whole lot of real estate, but you've got the long, well, not super long, but monolithic rail on top. So you still have a little bit of room to do what you want on there. It is aluminum. It's very solid. It doesn't wobble at all, and it actually indexes to the receiver, so you cannot rotate unless you loosen the 2 screws here. Out of the box, the gun will come with an orange plastic flash hider. You can pretty easily get this off. It's not glued on or anything. And it comes with this nice metal comp. This thing's loud and snappy, and it looks pretty slick too.
God.
This is the small card it comes with to instruct you on how to set up and use your MOSFET. The print is pretty small, so get your glasses. It comes stock on safe, semi, and full auto. You've got a safe semi 2-round burst, 3-round burst, safe semi binary, safe semi, and there's a German specific option there too. The next option is your trigger brake. So how far along your trigger pull you want it to actually fire. Your reset, so how far when you let off it'll reset and allow you to fire again. Active braking, you've got settings 2 through 9. It comes stock right in the middle there. A low battery indicator, a pre-cocking option with settings from 2 to 8, and a master reset is your very last option. All right, I can go ahead and plug in my battery. The airsoft gun beeps at me a few times. All right, we're now in programming mode. We can see inside the mag well there that there is a little green LED on the MOSFET. Unfortunately, it's a little tough to see. You really have to look up in the gearbox. And if I rotate my selector, it'll go to the next mode. But currently, we're on safe semi, full auto. So I'm going to hit the trigger a few times. And the third option is safe semi 3-round burst. So I'm going to leave it there and go into my next programming option. You can see it's a turquoise color. That is our trigger brake position. I currently have it set to 1, so it's at the very start of the brake. I'm going to leave it there because it's as short a trigger pull as you can possibly make it. Our next option is the trigger reset distance. I've got that set to 5 currently. Our next option there is active braking. I've got that set to the stock setting of 5. I'm going to leave it there because it's kind of right in the middle. I like that. I want the low battery indicator to be on, so I'm going to leave that there. Pre-cocking is off. If you want to mess with that, you can absolutely do that. That is an option. I'm not going to do that in this video though. And we have exited programming mode. So right now I'm semi, and it'll have a nice consistent 3-round burst. Even if you tap it, it'll fully execute the 3-round burst, so it will not stop it if you let off the trigger. It's a nice consistent 3-round burst as well. Never once does it do a single round or a 2-round burst. It is always a very consistent 3-round burst.
At your 11 o'clock roughly. Got at least 2 or 3.
One from yellow and one from red for diplomacy. Give me one with no weapon. We won't shoot you, I promise.
The running back here was going to shoot him anyway.
Oh, yeah.
The internals of the Karambit include the motor, hop-up and barrel, and the gearbox. The motor is pretty straightforward. It doesn't have a ton of torque. The speed is reasonable on it though. It pulls the spring in there at a decent rate of fire. It does have an O-type pinion gear and an aluminum shaft with bearings. The hop-up chamber is polymer, and it does click a little bit. You can kind of barely hear it there on the first half of the travel. But when you get to the second half, there's not really any clicking there. But it does have numbers all the way around the drum there, so you can tell where your hop-up's at any given time pretty well. The hop-up bucking uses a 2-fin design, and it actually works really well. This is able to hop some pretty heavy ammunition to an extreme distance right out of the box. The inner barrel is a 6.02 diameter, has some fairly deep crowning on it, which I like, and is a really short length. We're talking roughly a pistol length here. The gearbox is absolutely solid. We can see it uses a combination of 8mm solid bushings and bearings on the bevel gear there, bushings on the spur and sector. The front and back of the cylinder window are both reinforced with these thicker sections of metal here, and both are radiused as well. Found it interesting that someone wrote an arrow on the gearbox with a permanent marker there. There is a small window here to release the anti-reversal latch and detension your gearbox. I'll go ahead and take out the quick change spring here. Spring guide is all steel, has bearings, fantastic. And the spring is painted red on the back end there. I'm sure that symbolizes it's more of a field spring, and it seems to be a linear spring as well. The wiring on the back end is really short, less than 6 inches or so, and ends in a good quality Dean's or T-type connector. I'm going to take the shims off of the bushings here. They like to stick, and I want to keep my shimming. We'll start with the compression system here and work our way in from there. Let's check the compression here, and it is a really short cylinder volume there. Not a whole lot of air there, but you've got such a short barrel, you really don't need it. The seal is all right. It definitely could use a new layer of lubricant. Doesn't look like there's really anything on the piston rails, and it's really light on the O-ring, if much at all. The piston is Arcturus' standard steel tooth rack piston. Second to last tooth is removed, which is great. Piston head is ported and has bearings behind it as well. Cylinder is chrome plated, and the cylinder head fits really snugly in there. Single O-ring and a rubber damper in there as well, so pretty typical. The tappet plate is fairly flexible, which I like. The nozzle has an O-ring in there and is CNC palm material. Stuff tends to be pretty durable from what I've seen. The gears have a little bit of lubricant on them. It looks like they could definitely use a new coat of grease on there, but it's definitely present. They are steel, pretty typical standard gears. The anti-reversal latch sits on a pin instead of being completely one piece. You have your latch here, a small plastic washer, and your spring, and you can lift them out separately. This makes it quite a bit easier to reinstall your anti-reversal latch, and it doesn't pop out constantly. This does use a flat face trigger. It's rather neat. It's kind of the rage in airsoft guns nowadays. And it does have a screw on the front so you can adjust your distance of travel there. And it does actually have Loctite on the screw, which is fantastic. This is Arcturus' new optical MOSFET. Using this on the field, I was pretty happy with it. It seemed to work really well. On the opposite side, you've got IR sensors, so there's no little MOSFET switches or anything like that, no micro switches. It all runs off of optical and IR sensors. Something that's very typical too with these sorts of MOSFETs is there's a sticker on the other side for the IR reflection, and you can see that it's got a little cutout there for that little ridge of metal, which I find kind of funny. All right, now the fun part, we get to check shimming. Sector gear is shimmed pretty well. A little bit of movement there, axial-wise. I'm not sure I would bother putting a shim on there to correct that because it's so minor that I'm okay with it. And same with the spur gear. It's maybe a hair more, but still in that range of it doesn't need to be corrected. Same with the bevel. I'm okay with a little more play on this one. And it's still kind of progressively a hair more, and so on. So the gear height is really good. These don't play too much. They play just enough right where you want them. Spinning the gears They sound exactly as they should when they're shimmed really, really well. I can look in there and see the height between the sector and spur is excellent. They don't rub at each other, and they're as close as they can get without rubbing on each other. And same with the bevel and the spur. They're exactly the right height they should be. As usual, Arcturus does a fantastic job shimming their gearboxes. They get an A+. I'm not going to make any corrections to this whatsoever.
That's like 4 right there. Hit.
The range, the accuracy, the response, all the features from the MOSFET, everything. This thing just rocks, period. It is one of the most enjoyable airsoft guns out of the box I've used in a long time. It's lightweight. You don't get tired carrying this thing around. It's so small and compact for the range it has. It's nuts. I was able to sit behind a modest-sized tree and hit people 200 feet away through other small trees with the 0.32 gram BB ridiculously easily. Now this was at Nighthawk Airsoft. There were about 10 or 12 of us. We were holding the North Tower, which is the farthest, highest point on the field. And it was so much fun. We were slowly getting rolled on by 2 other teams that were also fighting each other. So it made for a really interesting game. And that was the perfect time to test this gun. A couple of things I would change about the gun, but honestly, they're pretty minor in the whole scheme of things. I would love a little bit more battery room, but that's just the way it is. You can still fit a small 11-1 LiPo in there, and I was able to get about 2,000 rounds out of the gun without an issue. Battery never dropped off or died or anything. It performed really well. The motor did get pretty hot, but that's because I shot probably 2,000 rounds through the gun in about 45 minutes or so at a pretty rapid succession. For an airsoft gun that retails about in the mid $200 range, and I've seen on sale in kind of the low 200s, this is a no-brainer. This is such an airsoft gun that you will not regret it. For seasoned airsofters, for new players, for someone looking for a fantastic but small lightweight field gun, or someone looking for a small indoor CQB gun, for something like that, you just probably drop in a slightly softer spring. It is more of a field spring that's in there. That's how it'll perform. So 10 out of 10. This is one of the best airsoft guns I've ever had the chance to review. Arcturus, you guys knocked it out of the park. This thing utterly rocks. Thank you guys at Arcturus for letting me check this out. Really having a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to using this on the field in the very near future again. Thanks guys, and I'll catch you in the next review.